Welcome to Intentionality with me, Paul Kempf, where we explore the possibilities and opportunities that can be created by a more intentional life. If you like what you hear, if you find value in the content and feel moved to do so, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you love this podcast or believe it is something that can make a difference in the life of someone you know and care about, please share it with them. Share it with the world so that we can reach more people and impact more lives. This is episode 10, our first milestone. We have reached the end of the first part of Intentionality with Paul Kempf. Over the last 9 episodes, we have explored the money part of the subtitle of this podcast, Mind, Money, Life. In future episodes, we will return to this topic. There's still lots to discuss. For now, I would like to explore and discuss other topics around an intentional life more in the next 10 episodes. I'm also hoping that for some of our episodes in the future, you will not have to sit and listen just to me. We hope to be able to host some interesting guests and to continue the intriguing journey of an intentional mind and intentional life in future episodes by getting other perspectives than just my own. Before we get to what I believe is the most important episode in this series so far, just a quick word about 3 words, all beginning with an I, that has a lot of personal meaning for me. I have in the past developed a formula for success in life that I have presented to colleagues at work, and over the years I have been developing this formula and adding new aspects to it over and over again. This means that this formula for success has become a bit long and clumsy, but the plan is still to share a version of it somewhere in the future in some future episode, to maybe dedicate a whole episode to it. For now, I have narrowed down the formula for success for myself to 3 words that I believe has in combination made the biggest difference in my life over the last 2 decades. The first one is obvious. It's such a powerful word that I have decided to make it the name of my podcast, Intentionality. Allow me again to remind you of the definition of intentionality: an attitude of purposefulness with a commitment to deliberate action. Now, if you take this word, intentionality, and you combine it with the second word, something really interesting starts happening. The second word starting with an I is intellectuality. Now, at one stage, I was playing around with the idea of making intellectuality the name of this podcast. Now, do not misunderstand me. I'm not talking here about intelligence as in IQ. Not everybody has a high IQ. It would be stupid to make that an ingredient for success if it's something that cannot be replicated by everybody. No, when I talk about intellectuality, I'm referring to the following aspects of intellectuality. The first is, look at one of the definitions I've found of intellectuality. It's the ability to learn and understand or to deal with problems, something we are all capable of. The second is emotional intelligence, very different from IQ in that EQ can be improved with enough dedication and intention. The third, common sense and logic, something that I find is sometimes very sorely lacking in a lot of things we do every day. If we can become just a bit more intentional with our common sense and logic, I think we will all have the potential to make a lot less mistakes. Fourth and finally, the ability to learn from our mistakes, to heed lessons that life teaches us. Intellectuality. And then there's the third word, starting with an I. And if you take all 3 of these words and combine them, intentionality, intellectuality, and the third one, intensity, That's where the magic starts happening. Imagine you do everything you do in life with an intensity that is on a higher level than anybody else. Imagine what you can achieve in life, at work, in sport, in relationships, if you are always the one bringing the most energy, the most enthusiasm, the most passion to the table. That is the way that I try to live my life and do everything in my life. My wife does say it's sometimes a bit tiring, but I've been doing it for so long now that I do not really know how to turn it off. Does high intensity always work? Does it mean everything you do in life is a success? Hell no. But I can promise you, you'll have more successes than failures in life if you bring the highest level of intensity you can to every situation. Now imagine what is possible when you combine intentionality, intellectuality, and intensity. You might just become unstoppable. Okay, back to your finances, your money. Let's talk about delayed gratification and sacrifice. After 9 episodes, 9 weeks, it is my sincere hope and wish that by now you have been inspired to make small but important changes in your thinking and behavior and habits around your finances, and that these changes have started yielding positive results. It is important to understand the crucial role of patience in this process, especially when the hole you have dug for yourself is very deep, like mine was 18 years ago. It took me about 5 years of patient effort, doing the right things every day, every month, every year, before I started seeing a substantial difference in my financial position. It took a team effort from me and my wife, and it took 2 other very important components that I want to share with you in this episode as lesson number 10 that I have learned in my life about money. And maybe, just maybe, if you have not yet seen any positive results from your efforts to change your financial position, you simply need this last lesson to push you over the edge, for you to actually stop digging and to get you on the path, the journey to a better future. These two are closely related. Maybe you could even say it's the same thing. But the 2 things I'm talking about now is delayed gratification and sacrifice. In my profession, I am often confronted by clients, colleagues, even friends, who knows what the right things are that they have to do in order to become financially well. I have given you a lot of ingredients to this recipe of financial wellness in the first 9 episodes of this podcast. And yes, the excuses continue to pile up for why we cannot do the right thing, why we need to postpone the right decisions, why we need to procrastinate on important components of a financial life plan. And inevitably, the solution to this last but stubborn problem is just as obvious and clear, but so incredibly difficult to implement. So here is how you start intentionally implementing the concepts of delayed gratification and sacrifice in your life. Number 1, decide what you can live without. What is not an absolute necessity in your life? If you are not yet financially where you want to be in your life, find something that you can sacrifice. The more it costs you every month, the better. If that proves too hard, simply find something small. Start with something small that you are prepared to sacrifice and build on that every month. Number 2, when considering new expenses, a purchase of a new item in your life, an asset, no matter what it is, give it a week to think about it. Then give it a month, then give it a year. And every time you start doubting if the delay is the right thing to do, ask yourself very intentionally if you really need this thing in your life now. Are you sure you cannot wait a little longer for it? What is the worst that can happen if you wait a little longer? Number 3, live within your means. I'm sure you have heard this before. What does it really mean? Well, for one thing, do not buy things you cannot afford. More importantly, you only buy certain things on debt. Maybe a house, a car, and a study loan. That's about it. Everything else you should never do on a credit card or a loan. Holidays, new TVs, DSTV, furniture, clothing, almost everything else should only be bought with savings and if you have a surplus in your budget. And obviously, only once you have been able to meet all your commitments, including provision for investments and retirement, do you then commit to that expense. Number 4, stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. How often do we spend money on something we cannot afford and or do not need just to impress other people? This reminds me of a quote by Charles Cooley that sums this point up perfectly. Now, it's quite a difficult quote to understand. I think I'm going to have to read it twice. It goes like this. I am not who you think I am. I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Complicated. Let's try it again. I am not who you think I am. I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. It really is about how we care too much what other people think of us. Stop caring what other people think about your perceived value when measured by material things. So on this point of material things, in what do you find your value? In showing off material assets? Maybe rather think about investing in amazing, life-changing experiences instead of material things. You will have a richer, more joyful, and more content life. If you are not yet financially well in your life, I implore you to be more intentional with your money by practicing delayed gratification and sacrifice as much as possible. You will get the rewards, and you will not regret your decision to do so. This week, I will not be ending off this episode with a recommendation or quote or tip, because I want to end off with a beautiful piece of writing, a poem written by Devin Bro that I feel perfectly sums up my message in this episode and succinctly wraps up the first 10 episodes of Intentionality by Paul Kempf. If you are not driving or running or cycling while listening to this podcast, if you are able to do so, please close your eyes just for a moment. Place your hand on your heart and focus with intent on my voice as I read to you this poem. Marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. Choose your hard. Obesity is hard. Being fit is hard. Choose your hard. Communication is hard. Not communicating is hard. Choose your hard. Being in debt is hard. Being financially disciplined is hard. Choose your hard. Life is not easy. It will always have hard in it. But we can choose our hard. Pick wisely. Thank you from me to my production team for these first 10 episodes. It has been a wild and interesting journey. And the only thing left to say is thank you for joining me on these first 10 episodes of this podcast. And congratulations on making the choice to live a more intentional life. I can't wait for our next 10 episodes. May the rest of your week be an amazing, intentional adventure.